Lynn, and I'm from Washington, D.C., and I run the Open Markets Institute, which is a think tank and sort of campaign operation that focuses on consolidation of economic power and tries to fight the consolidation of economic power. What people don't understand about the relationship between capital and food production is that, for the most part, capitalists try to use large corporations to take over sort of the properties of the farmer and the properties of the small business person, the little restaurants that we depend on, and the little food stores that we depend on, and the little food processors that we depend on. So what we've seen over the last generation, it's certainly true in the United States, and it's true, I know, in large parts of Europe, we've seen this massive consolidation of power over the farmer and over the restaurateur and over the people who are trying to bring better food to market. We see this amazing variety of incredible foods and this amazing variety of people who are sort of fighting the power. But they shouldn't have to fight this power. And this power, what it does is it prevents, especially people in the lower classes and the middle classes, the people who are working classes, from having a better food life. And so that's the problem with capital. Capital in itself is neutral, but it's the capitalists and their use of the corporation and the bank to concentrate power over us that has caused this incredible disruption in our society and in our political life. And that's what we, at my organization, that's what we fight. The globe is very much, the people of the globe are very much in an interdependent relationship. And that's, in many ways, that's a good thing. Sort of depending on people. If you live in the United States and you depend on people in China for some of the goods that you use every day, if you live in Europe and you depend on people in the United States for some of the food that you eat every day, if you live in Africa and you depend on places in other parts of the world for information and for sort of access to technology, that's a good thing. If everyone's tied together, that means that there's much less likelihood for major wars like we saw in the last century. But at the same time, we have to be very careful to protect what is local. And there's this, the capitalists, what they do is they say, in order to promote interdependence, in order to prevent war, what we have to do is take our corporations and sort of impose them on everybody, everywhere. Now, they're not preventing war, they're just concentrating power. The people that control our corporations have tied us together so extremely that right now, if something goes wrong in Asia, if something goes wrong in the United States, in one place in the world, that disruption can end up being transmitted everywhere in the world almost instantaneously. So we have gotten to a point in which we are way too interdependent, that the systems that the people that run our corporations control, they've stripped out all of the resiliency in those systems. They've stripped out all the redundancy. They've stripped out all of the slack. And systems need slack. You need to actually have some backup. You need to have warehouses full of food someplace in the system, a just-in-time system in which the food is going from its raw state to the shelf in the store within a day or two. That doesn't leave any slack anywhere for natural, normal disasters. There's going to be disasters. So what we have now is a system, a world system that is incredibly fragile. It's really built to break. And we have to, as a people, one of the things about sort of going local and promoting local and fighting the corporations, the people who run the corporations that are trying to concentrate everything and tie everything tightly together, is we're making the world much more safe. And people, when we fight the corporation, we should also understand that we're making the world a better place, a place in which we're not going to see the kind of cascading collapses that we saw in 2008. So what we have to do is understand that the way to make the world truly interdependent is to make everyone, every single person and every single community truly independent. So the pathway towards true interdependency, towards everyone working together as equals, is by making everyone independent of the great corporations that are controlled by the would-be masters of the world on Wall Street and in London and in the great capital centers of the world. We are taught that we have choice as consumers. We go into these supermarkets, which are huge. I mean, they cover acres of land. And we go up and down the aisles and we see thousands upon thousands upon thousands of different items with different labels on them. What we don't understand is actually that just a few corporations control just about every single item that are on those shelves. I mean, this is true of all the cans on the shelves, of all the frozen foods on the shelves, of all the meats that we see in the back of the store. And it's 3, 4, 5, 6 corporations. They use that store just to sell their wares, and they manipulate us through the sense that we have choice. We have no choice. Most people have no choice. Now, people with some wherewithal, people who live in the right place, people who have enough money, we can go to farmers markets, and we can go to restaurants that are sort of reaching out to the local farmers. But the great majority of people the choice that we are presented with is a false choice. And one of the things that if we actually, as citizens, want real choice, one of the things we have to do is just take these systems that have been designed to manipulate us and control us and farm us, extract money from us, and break them down. And that's possible. In fact, it's not just possible, it's something we're going to do. And one of the things that that's really quite remarkable is the fight that people are putting up across Africa, across South America, across Asia, as people who run these corporations try and bust into their lives and take over their societies. So we see all these people who are preserving the old ways, preserving the old systems, preserving the old diversities, ensuring that they're not going to turn over all of their land to a single corporation to farm for them and turn them into peons. And so we see all of these fights all across the world. We see them here in Europe. We see them in the United States. We see them especially, and this is where it's really, you see people fighting these incredibly brave fights in places like Peru, where I used to live, in places like South Africa. And they don't always win. I was part of a fight. I was actually, there was a period around 2011 when Walmart was moving to take over a corporation in South Africa called Massmart. And it was a terrible deal for the South Africans. It was going to strip them of all of this local production. And a whole bunch of people tried to fight that fight. We won twice in the South African courts and the South African government, but eventually, partly because of pressure by the Obama administration, the South African government caved. And Walmart was allowed to buy Massmart. That was a loss. But in general, I think we see incredible number of people fighting fights, real fights, and winning. Food for change, to me, what it means is that thinking as eaters about power, we can change the world entirely. We can change it from top to bottom. We can change it from bottom to top. I learned a lot when I started to write about power, when I started to write about systems and concentration. I was focusing on things like semiconductors. I was focusing on sort of the world system for the production of chemicals. And it was in about 12 or 13 years ago, I started to pay attention to what people, like in the slow food movement. And I read this book by Michael Pollan. And I started to think about the food systems and what was being done at the local levels. And I saw, it was like a revelation for me, about how you could really change the world from the bottom up at the same time that you're working to change it from the top down. Now, one thing that people who are in the food movement must understand is you cannot only change it from the bottom up. You must pick up the sword of government and use it to break the private monopolists that are taking over our world. You must do both. You must make the new farms, you must make the new markets, you must make the new restaurants, but you must also break the powers that are threatening our democracy and our societies.